for watching Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting all the way from the political command center across the continent of Africa. And in Nairobi, the Republic of Kenya, capital city, Nairobi. Good afternoon, Miriam, and good afternoon, all the participants on this show this afternoon. This is Dr. David Matanga of Punchline Africa Television, broadcasting from the political command center in Africa. Thank you very much. Back to you. This is Africa Showdown, a show that talks about Africa. Today we shall narrow our discussion on Kenya and then jump on an international discussion which actually goes straight to the information that we get from the continent of Africa. The United States Secretary of State is visiting at least 4 African countries to 5 in search for a solution. Is it the time to visit Africa? Why is he visiting Africa? Remember, Kenya is part of the United Nations Security Council, and therefore it has to be briefed on any actions that the United States deem to be fit to be done in the region. But before we go to that topic, which we shall exclusively and intensively interrogate, remember I told the people that United States planes and all other things were hovering over this region. There was something that was going to come. I was not wrong. I've been vindicated. Something has arrived. It is here in Ethiopia. And we have it. Either we solve it or we perish. Back to you in the studio, Miriam, to tell us about your headlines in Kenya and other developments, the politics of Kenya, and how Kenya is faring. The weatherman says from today there will be heavy rains. So those who are going to call Sirikari, you better carry your umbrella. Don't call Sirikari Nakufa. You have been told there are heavy rains. That's it. Back to you, to Miriam Ogutu, and I introduce the panel.
All right, Doc, thank you so much for that introduction. And of course, on the panel, we do have Samuel Omechi, Daniel Wesonga, and Samuel Tawish. And let me just take us through quickly, for the interest of time, the headlines, and then we'll just get into our topics of discussion this afternoon. The Sunday Nation: Ruto summons Uhuru ministers for talks. A deputy president invites 5 cabinet secretaries, some of whom have publicly criticized him, to join governors in a key meeting he will chair at his current home, stirring up a political storm. And then just down there, why I rejected Jubilee cabinet slot. That is an exclusive interview with the Martha Karua. And then Raila crafts new centers of power. The story is on page 5. Audit reveals found foul play at FKF. The saga continues on the back page of the Sunday Nation. And then the Sunday Standard, the main headline: inside the battle for Mount Kenya, 6 million votes. That is the main story. And then just down there, revealed the rot in troubled FKF and how killer gang lures taxi drivers using beautiful girls. The stories on page 14 and 15. And the rise of M-Pesa juggernaut. So that is what we have on the front page of the Sunday Standard, and indeed the leading newspapers today, Doc. So our topics of discussion on Kenya, politics and formation, and then we'll look at do Africa understand climate change. So that is what we have this afternoon.
Yes, thank you very much, Miriam, for that introduction. We straight away go to the first topic that you introduce us to the papers. The Daily Nation talks about the inside battle. The Ruto summons the ministers. As who? Summons. Is this the proper English? How do you summon? You are not a head of state to summon the ministers. You are directed by the president either to someone. Has he been directed? Or is he just using it as a ploy to belittle the president, that I can also summon some of the ministers? Then when they refuse, it's again cheap politics. Cheap politics, populist politics, politics of hatred, politics of intrigue, which Ruto has exhibited all the time. Miriam, I want to tell you that Ruto's ambition will end up in tears. And don't blame me when I say so. Blame yourselves. Don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves. Those of you who criticize me, because I always criticize Ruto, it's cry for yourselves. Don't cry for me. Remember, Jesus on a Sunday told people, the mother of Jerusalem, the mothers of Jerusalem, don't cry for me. Cry for yourselves, because it is your children who will suffer when you elect William Samoei Ruto. You can see the standard, the style is simply to antagonize His Excellency the President, who is apparently a man who grew up in a good home that does not want fitina and does not want to antagonize people. Summons, unless the nation got it wrong in English. But for Ruto summons Uhuru ministers, there are no Uhuru ministers. These are ministers of cabinet. They can meet in cabinet, but you can't summon them. You can't use your newsmen, your spokesmen, to look at the local, go to the newspaper and say, we have summoned them, to belittle them, to insult them in Karen. I don't know whether these ministers will go. And they are usually a man like a Magoha. He's not a man who misses his words. Magoha will say it. If he goes, it's up to them. But if I were the ministers, this type of headline, unless I get an official, the president has to okay them, whether to go and meet his estranged partner. Am I right there, Miriam? Estranged partner. A partner now who goes around yapping. A partner who sees Mount Kenya as the only place where you can build shrines, but you can't build a shrine in Eldoret. For the crying people, martyrdom, the martyrs who died in 2007 need a shrine. Why do you pray all the time in Mount Kenya as if God is only found in Mount Kenya? I'm only asking. I'm speaking like Mr. Museveni today. So I'm only asking, and this is a Ugandan type of asking. Where Songas don't get this. I'm asking, is God found in Mount Kenya only? Can churches be everywhere in the country? Can the deputy president pray somewhere else? Can he not fly to Marsabit and pray in one of the churches? Is it because Marsabit has no Christians? Can he? Why does he concentrate in Mount Kenya near his friend's place, the place where he's born? I have not seen President Uhuru Kenyatta apart from going to commission officer cadets in Eldoret, or is in Eldoret North constituency, trying to create chaos. But this is a man creating chaos for his president, for his boss. He is actually undermining the boss. And the Kenyans are keeping quiet. Oh, when you talk. By the way, Miriam, let me make one statement here. You Kenyans, you call me a Ugandan, but you eat our money, which is laundered by Ruto from Uganda. Hey, why do you eat our money and you hate Matsanga? They are watching it, boy. You hate Matsanga, but you eat our laundered money. There is money. 2 million, 2.5, 3 million. You see, it is our money. Because it comes from us. Tuambiane ukweli, Mr. Ruto, where do you get the money? You say you don't have anything, you have stolen here. Where else do you get the money? Your energy always comes when you go around Uganda-Kenya border. In Chebukube, Chebutais, Bungoma, you activate, you come out very strong. Aterere, we are watching you. You insult Matsanga every day. Oh, this Uganda, this is a global market. I am not making an insurgency here. I'm not Bob Wine. I'm not Bessie. Hello? I did my job and I finished. I returned my country to peace. I have the right to live anywhere in the world as a citizen of this global market that is expected market. So I don't know why people turn around and say, oh, Ugandan, my food. Ugandan, you are eating handouts from our own state, the industry, which was 15 million. Harun Ayadin was investing where? Medium, don't look down, I'm here with you. Where was Harun Ayadin? Wasn't it in Uganda? Therefore, don't insult me. It means that our money comes is very useful. Without it, where would you have the handouts? Tanga group, shame on you. Check your language. Munakula pesa zetu zinatoka kwetu. Munasema muko na pesa. Huyu anaiba pesa kutoka wapi? Zinatoka kwetu la jameni. Sasa munasema mimi iko Muganda. I am not Bessie. I am not Bob Wine. I am not. I was born on a different day. And I'm above. When I was fighting in Uganda against the one-party state, I finished, I shook hands and I finished my job. My children will fight, not me. When I shake my hand, I don't come with a box. I don't box people. So nyonye wa Kenya mnasema, oh, Matanga is Ugandan. Tawish is telling me, oh, this, oh, that. Well, jamani, wajana. Hii pesa zetu, mnakula zetu. Zinatoka huko. So you enjoy our handouts from our research in Uganda. Enjoy it. Tanga group that follow Ruto every minute. That is going for God. God is always in Mount Kenya, in Muranga. Why don't you also create God somewhere else? God is everywhere. Don't come every time you just say you are undermining your friend, that I'm summoning ministers. You summon them, they are part and parcel of you. You summon them where? Is the language correct? Uhuru ministers. Uhuru has ministers. I thought these are ministers for the government of Republic of Kenya. Wajama. Some of these newspapers and some of these television stations are very interesting. Medium for me. Yesterday I was watching another documentary, another presenter, when he was going to say the Prime Minister was in Kokambani. And let's now show you what the Prime Minister did. Guess what? They played the Ruto's tape. That is how your newsroom and the editors are here. Especially that one of KTN. There is a boy there, morning rubbish boy. That we UDA. You just go to UDA and leave the station. I don't know why Gideon Moy makes mess. I don't know. Is this station for Gideon Moy? a station of Gideon Moi should be broadcasting Gideon Moi first. But because money has been paid to everybody, don't call in Matanga because Matanga speaks for Uhuru Kenyatta, and then you are trying to link up with a Ugandan television. Then you bring in an expert to talk about Uganda who doesn't even know where the capital city is, whether it is in Entebbe or Uganda. Rubbish! What television is this? Let me be on mine. I will speak up to the end of Jerusalem. If Jerusalem goes down, I go down, man. I will support Uhuru Kenyatta at any cost. But don't call me a Ugandan when you are eating our money loan that is through there. Yeah. Mukule handouts. I don't know whether Wesonga is online for this handout. Miriam will ask you to tell us. If mukule handouts, lakini mjue mnakula pesa ile zinatoka Uganda. Zetu. Unaenda, you know, Ruto campaign had gone down, cooled down, until he went to Chebukube, Bungoma, then twice. Then he got worked out. You know, people think that others don't know what they are doing. So that notion of calling me a Ugandan, I have never bought an identity card to become a Kenyan. Mujue leo. Please, and I don't intend to fraudulently buy an identity card. I'll remain the same man, the same person, but speak about Africa. Because I went to school to study tools of analysis. I have the tools of analysis to analyze Africa, to analyze Kenya. You can't kill them unless you have shot me and killed me. But I have the tools. Even if you give us an exam with some of the professors, I will defeat them. Some of them don't even know what it is, the African politics. I have the experience, the knowledge, the tools of analysis on African affairs and international relations. You can't beat me in that. And then conflict resolution. Go ahead. Take your child to school, Ghana. Don't turn on me. Oh, Ugandan. Ugandan does not. Uganda doesn't know. We know. Internet is everywhere. A Ugandan can set a television in London and they will be talking about Kenya. What will you do? As long as I am committed, isn't it, Miriam? I'm committed to an African affair. Is Kenya not part of Africa? You want Bazungu to come and tell you. So this headline of the Sunday Nation, therefore I submit, is misleading. There are no Uhuru ministers. There are no, you can't summon people who are part and the parcel of you. This is a headline done to belittle the president. So as the legacy trend, and on behalf of the legacy that keeps the legacy of His Excellency, the President of Republic of Kenya, my friend, Pan-African man, the man loved in African international scene, I say, this is just to belittle the president. He wants to show that he can summon those guys and they can come. He has been running on stepping on Uhuru's head everywhere. He's now running like a headless chicken because he knows on the 30th of November, after the declaration, he might find it very difficult. When we convene our remaining Jubilee, Mr. Ruto, you will find it very difficult. Wacha nikwambie, and Miriam put this down. Utapata mbele itakuwa ngumu na utaona itakuwa mawe. Wewe, you have harassed this man too much. But it is good you have left Jubilee. We are friends of Jubilee. we shall help the Jubilee Party to reorganize itself. But when we reorganize ourselves, we come for you. We shall come for you. Then you will see. You might have no head. It will be just a headless chicken running around, trying to say where to salvage. Politics has not started yet. Over to you, Miriam.
Very well, thank you so much. So just a bit of that story on page 4 of the Sunday Nation. Deputy President William Ruto has summoned 5 cabinet secretaries and the Council of Governors to a meeting of the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council, IBEC, next week, causing jitters as 2022 politics takes center stage. A year or so ago, an IBEC meeting, which statutorily provided for by Section 187 of the Public Finance Management Act, would have passed with just a little mention. Now, the CSS that Dr. Ruto has invited include Okur Yatan of the National Treasury, Professor George Magoha of Education, Peter Munya, Agriculture, James Macharia, Transport, Infrastructure and Housing, Urban Development and Public Works, and Charles Keter of Devolution. For some invitees, the meeting, well mentioned as it may, is well intentioned as it could have a channel for backing up the campaign messaging for the DP. And the letter that was written from the DP, part of it reads, the purpose of this letter is to inform you that the next full council meeting shall take place on Monday, 22nd November 2022 at the office of the Deputy President, Karen Office at 9 a.m. States the invitation letter by Ken Osiande, the DP's Chief of Staff. So Deputy President is back at working again. Samuel Tavish.
Thank you so much, Miriam Ogutu. Thank you to Dr. David Masanga and the rest of the colleague panelists, including those who are watching this program this afternoon. Miriam, you know, I'm not quite excited or even surprised that Deputy President William Ruto is going ahead really to extend this invitation to members of cabinet, to these ministers, and even the Council of Governors. The reason why I'm saying so is because, Miriam, we all understand that William Ruto left government a long time ago. He's made it public every other time that he no longer, that he was actually shoved off, or rather pushed off the Jubilee administration. And therefore, that's why he went and formed this UDA outfit. And that is what he's been selling around the country. That has been his focus. He has never been working. I've never seen him even meet any of the say, for example, foreign envoys from across the world. I've never seen him have such kind of meetings, even with other ministers, for different purposes of administration in government. Why is doing this at this particular time, especially a few days or weeks after he had indicted, of course, rather accused some of the section of the ministers for working with the former Prime Minister Odinga, really speaks volumes, Miriam. I know he's the person who chairs that intergovernmental committee, but the question is, how come that for the last, I think, 2-3 years, he's not been very committed on this cause, and even in other instances, because this is not the only function that the Deputy President is supposed to oversee in government. There are so many other functions, and he has abrogated his duty. He's not been working for the people of Kenya officially as the Deputy President, save for just chasing for his own ambition, the 2022 presidential ambition. So one, it will be very interesting really to see whether these CSS are going to actually honor the invitation or summons, as you put it, to go and attend that meeting with the Deputy President William Ruto. And it has, of course, a double-edged ramification, whether they go or they don't go, because I'm sure Deputy President William Ruto wants to capitalize on that meeting. One, he wants to use the same as a launching pad for his presidential bid, and maybe to try and woo these ministers to support his presidential bid. Mm-hmm. Another one will be that he has invited people in government to come and attend a government function, and they have refused to come. So, but by the end of the day, the question is, Deputy President William Ruto has been in the public domain saying he no longer he is no longer in government. He was pushed away from government. So if he invites these ministers, he will be inviting them as who? Because he has always told us he no longer works with President Uhuru Kenyatta from the time we have had the handshake in 2018 up to this particular moment. So it is something that it is quite interesting, and it is all about, of course, trying to just to cause some fracas and drama as we get into 2022 general election, Miriam. So we are waiting really to see whether these ministers are going to honor these summons.
Okay. Now, just a reminder, Mr. Macharia and Mr. Munya were among the 4 CSAs who in 2019 were accused of threatening the DP's life. Remember that letter? And then Mr. Yatani has always told of DP over the proposal to raise the minimum revenue share to counties to 35%. And of course, all these 5 CSAs that he has invited would be considered pro-handshake. Do you see a scenario, Daniel Wesonga, where Professor George Magoha will honor such an invite?
Yes, thank you, Miriam Ogutu, and it's my pleasure to be on the show this afternoon, and good afternoon to our viewers who are watching us here in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the globe. Like my good brother Tarisho has said, like Dr. Matsanga has said, the timing and the intention of this particular sermon is very suspect. We are having this invitation coming just when dust is settling on whatever happened in Kisumu. You saw the other day a chaotic tour of the deputy president in Kondele. What pundits and experts perceive perhaps was a self-inflicted attack, in that we've seen his troops actually capitalizing on that particular campaign, the botched campaign in Kondele, as a fodder for politics. And we saw even yesterday in Kiambu County trying to profile an entire community, which is very, very unfortunate. So to me, like my brother has said, Tarisha said, Deputy President has been on the sidelines of the leadership of President Uhuru Kenyatta for almost 3 years now. And this is not because the president has chased the deputy president away. It is because the deputy president has become very, very uncooperative. The deputy president has been running in an opposite direction from where his boss is running, if you were to go with the words of President Uhuru Kenyatta at Boma some time back. So to me, I think he wants to see whether these cabinet secretaries will attend this particular function or not. And if they do not attend, perhaps whatever Dr. Matsanga or Tawish have said is very, very correct. He'll go out there telling the people that I wanted to address your issues with the relevant cabinet secretaries, but they ignored my call. If they're going to be coming to this particular function, perhaps also he's going to find a way of capitalizing on it, maybe by just saying that perhaps he still has a sway in government and all that kind of political discourse. So I think, to me, this is an issue which should be looked with a bit of cool head and wit. And of course, my point would be that the deputy president, in as much as he's calling on this cabinet secretary to come and show up for that particular meeting, he should also learn that whoever wants to command should first of all learn how to obey. Because it cannot be that Miriam, the deputy president, has been disrespecting the orders and the calls from his boss to abstain from premature politics. He has been actually not been supporting his boss in implementing the Big Four agenda. But when it comes to his call, when he wants to have a meeting with these ministers, he expects them to actually oblige and come to his call. I don't think that is how government works. A government should work in harmony from the top to the bottom. But the deputy president has been a person who conveniently chooses what to do, what to say, at what particular place in order to favor his bid, or maybe to disorient and launch attacks to his boss's work. So to me, I think these are very, very political call, and perhaps the government will decide on which way to go. But to me, I think it will be good if they go, so that William Ruto does not find an excuse of telling Kenyans that he has been intentionally sidelined by the government of the day.
Okay, thank you so much. Daniel Wesonga. Samuel Omechi, good afternoon. Okay, he's not there. Douglas Kirimia, very good afternoon to you.
There is Samson.
Sorry, I said Samuel. It's Samson. I apologize. So after Douglas, will come back to Samson. I apologize.
Before my son Douglas comes in.
All right, Samson is here. So Samson, this meeting is scheduled to take place on... Could you mute first? Yes. Yeah, the meeting is scheduled to take place on 22nd of November, 9 a.m. And is there perhaps a reason why you think Ruto has summoned these 5 CSS And what do you think is his intention?
Good afternoon, Miriam. Good afternoon, Dr. Masanga and the panelists and all those who are watching. What is coming out is not new and it's not a surprise, because Ruto is known to controversy, number one. And he has never been serious about doing anything in terms of teaching the president to achieve his goals. I'm not surprised that Ruto is now conspiring even with the media and to make it appear that the government is not cooperating. Ruto is the principal assistant of the president at the constitutional mandate. Ruto cannot be purported to someone or to invite or to do whatever he's trying to do in the guise that now is trying to work for the government. And remember, this is the same government that Ruto is fighting. To me, I don't understand how you can now start working with the government that you are always fighting day in, day out, all over. Even yesterday, Ruto was in somewhere in Kiambu fighting the government. So it's now, what is spoiling this country is this money, this dirty money, this bloody money that Ruto is walking around with. I hear Masanga is saying the money is coming from Uganda. I don't know. But this money is now, in fact, even reporting from media, from the mainstream media. If Ruto was serious, in fact, that meeting could have come in a different way. Could have not started by inviting ministers. Could have started by abandoning these premature campaigns against the government. The onslaught against the ministers is in fact trying to invite the ministers and is always accusing or working with the opposition. So to me, I don't understand why Ruto is trying to take us for granted. Ruto is just taken us for granted. You cannot invite the minister to Karen where you are in politics. Karen is known for politics, as I mentioned. So I don't understand what Ruto is up, but Ruto is not new to controversy. I doubt whether that the meeting will be materialized or whether the cabinet minister to attend, unless there is some.
All right, Samson, we're having a bit of a problem with your connection. It's not very clear. I don't know if you're able to fix that. The sound is not very good. Okay, all right, thank you so much. I just move on to Douglas Akirima. Thank you so much, Samson, for that. Yeah. Okay, I'll come back to you a bit later, but now I just want to hear what Douglas Kirimi has to say about this. First of all, personally, I don't see these 5 CSs attending this meeting, and if they will, then I will be surprised. Douglas Kirimi, I don't know about you.
A very good afternoon to you, Miriam Ogudu, and also Dr. David Masanga, Daniel Wasonga, Samuel Odisesana Tawish, and also Samson. Miriam, I don't think they should attend that meeting, and if they are going to attend that meeting, it's a waste of time. Because Peter Munya of the Ministry of Agriculture, Cooperative and Fisheries is a man that is on a mission to restore the lost glory of the Ministry of Agriculture. The lost years that Mwangi Kiunjuri and William Ruto have taken farmers' money that was meant to buy maize, that was meant to buy subsidized fertilizer, and all that. Ministry of Education under George Magoha, he has a huge task ahead of him to restore the image of schools that have been crossed due to the issues of unrest and strikes from students, and he has a lot of issues to tackle to make sure that our children get the best from our schools, and also making sure that education docket is giving our children what they need for them to be able to achieve better in schools, and also make education affordable for the people of Kenya, and also make sure that this education brings good results. And other ministers also, Miriam, it brings me to the question, why is Deputy President William Ruto interested in cabinet secretaries that are working and people that are committed to the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta? All I know, Miriam, is this, that the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Ruto, is a man on a mission to become president President Uhuru Kenyatta's cabinet ministers are people on a mission to make sure that the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta brings unity to the people of Kenya, brings development to the people of Kenya, achieves universal health care, 100% transition to primary and secondary school education, making sure that agriculture works for all the people of Kenya, because agriculture is the backbone of this economy and this country. Miriam, why should we continue with the theatrics of Dr. William Ruto, like Sean Wasonga said, for the last 3 years to 4 years, he's been campaigning to become president. This is a time-wasting exercise, calling these ministers for a meeting. This is a public relations show that he has been able to come out very clearly to tell the people of Kenya that I'm not interested in working for you. It is only the constitution that keeps me sucking and misusing your public taxes, and making sure that I campaign to become the president of the Republic of Kenya. And I'm warning Kenyans to continue with their restraint, and also to continue avoiding this man who has always been spending public taxes, buying tea, and also preparing snacks for pastors to go and pray for him at a government residence. Miriam, these cabinet ministers should focus on their core agenda. Their boss is President Uhuru Kenyatta. They should not be able to honor summons to Aaron Lenja, a man that has always worked for his own selfish ambition to become president. And they have a mandate, Miriam, to transform the lives of the people of Kenya, bring unity and inclusion, bring opportunities for young people in this nation. And this is a man who is wasting precious time that is meant to transform the lives of the people of Kenya, transform our own economy, and grow it to an 8 or 9 digit economy. And this is a man dragging them to campaign meetings in Karen. Karen has been converted into a political shrine that our cabinet secretaries cannot be able to go and worship him in Karen and prepare and pay allegiance to him and his presidential ambition. So, Miriam, for me, this is a time-wasting exercise that I don't think our man from Meru, Peter Munya, George Magoa, and others can be able to honor such summons, Miriam, because these are very busy cabinet secretaries who have no time to waste. They are here working for Kenyans and working for the mandate and the direction of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And that will take us to our second topic under Kenya, and that is, do Africa understand climate change? And of course, we know that a deal aimed at staving off dangerous climate change has been struck at the COP26 summit in Glasgow. The Glasgow Climate Pact is the first ever climate deal to explicitly plan to reduce coal, the worst fossil fuel for greenhouse gases. The deal also presses for more urgent emission cuts and promises more money for developing countries to help them adapt to climate impacts. But the pledges don't go far enough to limit temperatures rise to 1.5 Celsius. Now, our commitment to phase out coal that was included in earlier negotiation drafts led to a dramatic finish after India and China led opposition to it. India's climate minister Bhupender Yadav asked how developing countries, including Africa, could promise to phase out coal and fossil fuel subsidies when they still have to deal with their development agendas and poverty eradication. In other words, what the Prime Minister for India was saying, the Climate Minister for India was saying that Africa has more bigger problems and climate might not be just one of them. They still have development agendas and poverty to eradicate. So our topic on that is, do Africa understand climate change? And perhaps, Doc, you would start it off for us.
First of all, Miriam, before we go, we cross up there. I see very interesting comments coming from some Sudanese here. Some South Sudanese, the ones we have helped all the time to restore their own dignity. So I don't know why they think we should not talk about Kenya, or why they have become an advocate of Ruto. Are you part of the people? Because Ruto supports the axis in equatorial South Sudan to create, to dismember Salva Kiir and Riek Machar agreement. You better tell us also. So if you think you will not be hit, I am a man who does not stop hitting you. And I always say my facts. I have said I'm not involving myself in anything, but I'm stating facts, Miriam. I am looking at the newspapers in Nairobi. They said the summons, you read the headline, the summons, Ruto summons Uhuru's ministers. There are no Uhuru's ministers here. We have cabinet ministers of the government of the Republic of Kenya. Therefore, that the headline is wrong. 2, it is just a matter of time that the truth will come out. Because, excuse me, because Ruto is doing it for publicity. He's not doing it for the good. He's just doing it to publicize, to undermine the president. That's it. If I were one of those, I would not go. But if they choose to go, it is up to them. But for me, a proud man like myself, I will not go. So I got one. I don't know why you think that I'm a troublemaker. I did not make any trouble. I negotiated the peace agreement in South Sudan. It created South Sudan by crossing the army that was prohibiting that creation across to Western Equatoria and in Congo. And therefore, I don't have anything. God, if you want anything, ask Riek Machar, who knows me better than you, who might be just in Washington or somewhere living on handouts, maybe from 7. I don't live on handouts from 7. Please. Yeah. You might be even having Ugandan passport, which you run around, diplomatic passport that you run around. I don't. So please, that's the basis upon which I'm saying, let's discuss facts. I was not discussing anything outside the blue. I am saying the truth. This is going to dismember. I have said it. Ethiopia is now bleeding. Who is remembering the words that I said here about Ethiopia? Isn't it bleeding? It is bleeding. Thank you. You can ask your question again.
Okay, so we are in the climate, the second part of the conversation. Do Africa understand climate change?
I don't think so. Medium, I just want to be categorical that most Africans, most of us, very few people understand the dangers of climate change. And you can see it from any time now. The climate change, what happened in Glasgow is a disaster. And it ended up to the same words that I used in my paper. I would like you to go back to my paper one day when you are seated in your sitting room and look at what I said on 29th of October 2021. I stated categorically that we Africans, we are not part of global village. We are spectators or we are just intruders. The people who pollute this continent are not from Africa. The people who pollute this continent are China, Russia, Brazil, India, United States of America, and France. Those countries did not even, some of them did not sign the protocol. It's only Britain that has signed the protocol. So some of the countries are absent. We are going to have the same problem. So we don't understand anything about climate change. But I want to thank CS Mr. Tobiko. Mr. Tobiko, we flew together to Scotland, to United Kingdom in the same aircraft. We went, he did a great job. Miriam, if there is a ministry that has shown the value of the money, of why the ministry exists, it is the Ministry of Environment. On this time, the minister allowed the people, the minister mobilized the people, the minister mobilized environmental people, people who talk about their forests. Over 72 delegates. Some of them were assisted by the government in terms of accommodation, and they were accredited. That, let's give a credit to Tobiko, CS for Forest and Environment, and some, I don't know, for Environment, who did a great job. And let's give a credit to President Uhuru Kenyatta, who himself made a very maiden speech, and the Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, they actually called out. Some of the things that they said are the things that have come out in the final protocol. I was right when I held that pre-COP26 conference in London. I told you, we shall go back with rhetoric, nothing. Some of the countries, the money that they are talking about will not come. So it is up to Africans to start looking at our weather, at the climate, at the ecosystems, at the environment. Medium, these people pollute our politics. They pollute. You might think environment. If you have bad politics, it will destroy the ecosystem, isn't it? If you have bad economy, you will destroy the environment. These guys destroy all those facets that keep us together. They have brought a knife on the things that held us together. The mafia clan of Africa has fallen apart. Thank you, I submit.
All right, thank you so much. And now we know one of the key things of the deals was to reduce, limit the use of coal, and I think it's used here a lot. Is there something that we can do as a country, Samuel Tawish, to discourage the use of charcoal and other things that pollute the environment as a country?
Well, Miriam, I think there's been a rigorous campaign to see how we can adopt green energy, and so that we can be able also to deal with this climate crisis. And this is not a situation only in Kenya, maybe Africa, but I think the rest of the world. Although Africa as a continent today bears the biggest brunt in as far as climate crisis is concerned. But again, directly to your question, Miriam, as to whether or what Kenya can do to make sure that probably we can reduce the use of, say, charcoal, for instance. It is something that remains really just an appeal. It remains, decisions and instructions on paper. But when you go to the ground today, as we speak, Miriam, our forests have been completely destroyed because people continue to burn charcoal. Our water catchment areas have completely been destroyed. As we speak today, Miriam, people do not know that the responsibility to protect the environment, to safeguard and protect the environment, which has an impact on our climate, really is an individual responsibility and not necessarily that of government or that of the, say, the foreign nations. Because Miriam, for instance, today, Dr. Masanga was just the other day telling us about how we even dispose our garbage. I mean, in itself, you know, it has an impact when it comes to the climate. How do we dispose our garbage, for instance? What is it that you do to ensure that we increase our forest cover in this country, Kenya? I mean, nobody. In fact, even if you're to ask in this panel, when last did we plant even a single tree? Never, maybe. That would be the answer you'll quite get from the panel here. So there's not so much coming from that kind of, that conviction that this initiative to ensure that we safeguard our environment and ensure that we are able to be part and parcel of an effort to address the climate crisis the world is facing today. And that is why you see today we actually facing the challenges of the climate as it is today. And if we are to make any significant progress in this front, Miriam, then the right thing to do will be at an individual capacity, at an individual level. Let us do that which we can do. For example, discouraging people from cutting down our trees, discouraging people from burning charcoals, ensuring that we do not encroach the water catchment areas. By doing so, we will be individually but collectively helping in safeguarding our environment, and by and large, of course, ensuring that we are also helping in this, fight to restore our climatic condition globally. So, Miriam, it's something that cannot just be a one-day effort. It's something that we will continually need to advocate for and do a very big advocacy to ensure that each and everybody gets to understand why it is important for us to safeguard our environment, and to that extent, therefore, we'll be restoring our climate, Miriam, I submit.
All right, very well. And I hear you when you're saying that the government and even just personal responsibility. People should be discouraged from cutting down of trees, but we know that in majority of our rural areas, that is the means of fuel. That is how they cook. That is how they, they get energy to cook and all that. So could it be perhaps for the interest of, this pledge that Kenya has made, perhaps things like renewable energy, LPG, right now it's a bit accessible, but could there a way that, policies could be put in place. These taxes that have made gas to be very expensive, if something could be done about it, that now something like LPG can become more accessible to more Kenyans, even in the rural area, will this not go a long way in helping us achieve at least part of this goal? Daniel Wesonga.
Yes, thank you so much, Miriam Ogutu. And of course, I join the likes of Dr. Masanga David and my brother Tarish Folesina to say that in as much as Africa has taken the biggest part in this climate change topic, Africa has been left out of the conversation. We've not been part of the global village when it comes to a conversation basing on climate change and how to move towards green energy. And you realize that the African continent is feeling these particular menace quite more than even the European countries. You realize that in Africa, droughts have become more persistent and become more longer than they were before. You realize that even as we are speaking today, most parts of even our own country, Kenya, are facing hunger and starvation. You realize that we have increased salinity of our soils, in that even crop production is not quite working for our people who are subsistence farmers. We also have the issue of actually more diseases having mutation and becoming a bit incurable. And that is due to the global warming that we're having. And all these factors and effects are being felt in the third world countries. So to me, I think we should be the biggest stakeholders when it comes to the talks about climate change and how we can be able to reduce carbonization of our planet. But regardless of the fact that we are the biggest casualties, you realize that most conversation about climate change, even the recently concluded summit in Glasgow, Africa only comes into the picture when it in talk, but in reality, nothing is being done. Like I told you the other day, less than 1% of the funds which are intended to support measures and initiative to reduce carbonization in Africa, only 1% has been actually been dispersed. Donors talk about giving out $100 billion US, but that has only remained on paper. Nothing has been felt on the ground. So to me, I think it is high time the African continent and other third world countries in Asia, in South America, were also included in this particular talk. And we need infrastructure. You cannot talk about maybe giving people in the villages green energy if you do not give them the capacity, if you do not give them the funds. Remember, these are majority of people who are living below $1 a day in terms of meals. So they cannot be struggling to get maybe their meals and also struggling to get these equipment that will enable them to use green energy. So, and you understand that green energy is not cheap energy. But more so, Miriam, I believe also governments of the day should actually copy whatever Kenyan government is doing. You realize that in Africa, Kenya is perhaps, after Egypt and the likes of South Africa, is perhaps leading. We will say in sub-Saharan Africa is leading in electricity connectivity. And that actually is an effort to move away from using charcoal and other carbon potent energies. So to me, I think if the government of the day could actually invest more in such particular energy sources, and also the global players also let them avail funds for citizenry of these countries to also be able to get these equipment that will make them move from away from using firewood, then we shall be able to achieve that. And another point that Rish mentioned is that we can always, at an individual level, at a government level, at a continental level, we can always do what is expected of us. We can always go out there and preach to people to stop deforestation, to recycle whatever commodities that could be recycled, and always take care of our environment. So it is all about a universal responsibility, not just individual, governmental, or organizational. I submit.
Very well. Thank you. Omechi Samson.
Thank you, Miriam.
So of course one of the key achievements of the COP26, one of them was to increase financial help, especially for developing countries. Should this become a reality, where would you want this fund to be channeled?
Thank you, Miriam. I think this is one of the debates that will never end. the debate about the climate change and the environmental conservation is a serious debate. It has been there and it will remain to be there as long as we live. Because number one, the funds that they are, I think that those are the promises. I'm not sure, but I think they have promised something.
Mm-hmm.
The funds should be channeled in a manner that will benefit the African continent, that will benefit the ordinary people who are the greatest actually in terms of the climate change. Because when we talk about the earthquakes, the matters earth, this is an funny diseases is a consequence of climate change. And these people, they don't have the capacity to make the necessary attention. And I believe that the government...
We are having some challenges. I really want to hear what you're saying, but could you try the audio? We see if it will make any difference, please, Samson. Go ahead.
Am I clear? What I was saying is that the governments in Africa, and especially more particularly in Kenya, will be now more serious. And I remember we have discussed the same issue last time when we said that there was a grant of like $150 million to plant trees in the villages. Mm-hmm. We want now the government to be more serious, more than ever, so that at the end of the day, those funds, when they reach in this country or wherever, in the African continent, they are well spent. They are spent for the intended purpose. Because there is a lot of diversion, we know there is a corruption all over the continent, and that is now the white elephant in the room. What we are saying, and from where I stand, and if the governments are serious, the donors, they will make a forum. And to ensure that even these funds, they are spent for the intended purpose, because climate change is serious. Climate is not a joke. It's not the politics like what we are witnessing around. It is eating us. It's killing our people. It's making it's making life more difficult. Because each day there is a lot of new diseases we don't even understand. But if you go deeper, you will realize that it's a consequence of the impact of the climate change. There is environmental impact, the negative impact of environmental changes. So we must be very careful and be very keen now, mm-hmm. Even from our individual level, we must ensure that even those funds, when they reach, because at the end of the day, the ordinary people, they are struggling with life. They don't care. They don't know even whether there was a conference elsewhere. They don't know. Because there is no capacity building. Nobody informs the population that there is something going on. There is money coming. 90% of Kenyans don't know about these funds. Don't know even about the COP26, the conference at the end of the other day. So there is everything to with the information sharing. Mm-hmm. If we manage to share this information, people will be very vigilant. And now we must take up as an individual responsibility so that we inform the masses that there is something, there is money coming, so that the people will be very keen to ask questions, to ask the government, to ask county government, mm-hmm. whether they have received the money that was promised, all right. So that they can brand it. I think there is something that we need to do. We need to continue now making to share a lot of information concerning the environment, concerning climate. Majority of Kenyans, majority of Africans, they are very poor. They don't know even about these things we are talking here.
All right.
They are nobody's telling them. So I submit.
I hear you, and I think that is one of the points that the India's one of the climate minister of India was saying Africa still has so much to deal with in terms of its development agendas and poverty eradication. So climate change might not be on top of its list. But this is why climate change should be on top of our list as a continent, because a new report by the United Nations has warned that more than 100 million extremely poor people across Africa are threatened by accelerating climate change that could also melt away the continent's few glaciers within 2 decades. In sub-Saharan Africa, climate change could further lower gross domestic product by up to 3% by 2050. So this is something that obviously should worry us, because the impact, even as you see right now, the weather patterns in this country has really changed. When you look at 10 years ago, it's quite different. And so this is something that has to be on top of the things that we worry about as a country and as a continent. Douglas Kirimi.
Thank you, Miriam Ogutu. I think these are things that should be able to worry us even more as the people of Kenya. Remember also, Miriam, when you walk across rural Kenya, across upcountry, you see even rivers that were feeding farms or maybe homes with the clean water. Those rivers do not have the capacity to serve millions of Kenyans or thousands of Kenyans in the sources or where they pass through. And this is also creating anger in most of these families and most of these rural folks and many other places in this country, because, for example, people that rear animals or people that keep livestock, they do not have enough culture, and they have no clean water for the animals, or they have no water to farm, or they have no enough water to drink. And this is a priority. This is something that we should be able to give a priority if we are going to maintain and keep our countries the way we know them, keep our populations well-fed, and also to ensure that food security for our own people, for our own country is secured. Because at the end of the day, if we are not food secure, we are not going to keep our populations the way we know it. People are going to die of hunger. I've seen many places in this country that have declared that the famine has been able to encroach their places, and also people are starving. And Miriam, these are effects of climate change. 10, 20 years ago, we used to predict when the rains are going to start, but we cannot be able to, we can no longer be able to do the same today, because the climatic conditions are very unpredictable. We cannot be able to predict when the rains are going to start and when the rains are going to stop. Oh, Miriam, the rains are going to come, and when the rains starts, they are going to fund, they are going to cause funding everywhere, and everything that we know as good farmlands today, we will have funds, and at the end of the day, the people of Kenya are not going to enjoy their crops the way they used to, and we are not going to enjoy our own country as a food secure country the way we used to know it, Miriam. I agree that African continent and maybe the world, all over the world, we need to be able to, number one, give a priority to areas that are adversely affected by climatic changes the way we know it today. Because at the end of the day, Miriam, if we do not do that, we are going to starve as the continent of Africa or the world the way we know it today, Miriam. Climate change is a priority for every serious country, or any country that is under threat, or any country that is ready for the future or protection of their own populations, Miriam. Thank you, I submit.
All right, thank you. And I think that marks the end of that topic as we get into our last topic, and that has to do with the visit of the United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who will be making his first trip to sub-Saharan Africa in an official capacity. Could you mute your device, please? In an official capacity next week, and he will be visiting Kenya, Nigeria, as well as Senegal, the State Department has said, and there are some issues that he will be expected to discuss with these countries, and that will be the COVID-19 pandemic and building back to a more inclusive global economy, and also combating the climate crisis, revitalizing democracies, and advancing peace and security. And that is according to the State Department statement that was given on Thursday. So, Doc, you start us off again in this.
First of all, Miriam, and the viewers, wherever you are across the world, those who will come across this tape or this video and replay it, I want to be very categorical and state that this was anticipated. First, Kenya is a member of the United Nations Security Council. For United States to push its agenda, it needs to canvass as many members of the Security Council as possible. It needs to talk to their people. The situation right now in the Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes region of Africa and Africa in general calls for a very serious intervention, of which we cannot see the intervention coming as we expected as Africans. But who brings this type of chaos that we see? The Secretary of State will be confronted with several messages, several protest messages, people wanting to know. For example, the war in Ethiopia, people have played politics with that war. Some African countries have been on watermelon angle. They have never supported or refused to support or condemned. They have been there. If you look at IGAD is summoning the heads of state in Kampala on Tuesday. But it is the same. What are they going to achieve in that summit? This summit is being called, but to say what? Are you going to order Ethiopia to go on round the table? Do you have the mandate? Are you going to order the rebels to go on round the table? Do we have the mandate? Who has the mandate to order these countries to go on a round table? You see all the countries in the region, some of them are silent, some of them are playing the watermelon situation, some of them don't want even to know. It is only Kenya that in the middle that it has already declared its border closed because the impact of refugees, if the rebels threaten to enter, as they have said, they are about 40 kilometers away from the capital city, as we hear. Then we have a very serious situation going to happen. Therefore, you must prepare for refugees, the influx of other arms that will come into our territory. President Uhuru Kenyatta on Friday issued extra surveillance, extra care by security agencies. Our police in Kenya have been recalled. Those who were on leave, they have been told to return to their duty stations not later than 17th or so of November because of the seriousness of the security threat that we see. What will the Secretary of State achieve? What is he coming to do? What will it benefit Africa? Which we should have ourselves ask ourselves. Is there any benefit that we Africans shall get? Already, United States of America has determined its position on Ethiopia. It does not like the Ethiopian government at all. What went wrong? What happened? Ethiopia was one of the countries that had actually good GDP and with an economy. When my late friend Zenawi died, may his soul rest in peace. Zenawi left a GDP. Ethiopia was an envy of Africa. They had started doing their own things. They were manufacturing things. Now today, someone has just destroyed that country. Some Western powers have destroyed, have sat down. Who's building the dam? Who got the contract to build the dam? Aren't they Chinese medium? The dam was built by Chinese. Am I wrong? It is. So look at the problem. We have brought a Cold War. They have failed to fight this Cold War directly with China, but they have brought the Cold War down here on the continent of Africa, and we are the recipients. It's we Africans who are recipients. Medium, we are now paying the price of a Cold War, of China building a dam, the Ethiopian dam, that created tension between Ethiopia and Egypt, that Egypt went ahead to fund and equip logistically supply arms to Tigray. So where are we today? We are in a terrible situation. The Secretary of State will find those questions. The Secretary of State will also find no Mugabe to tell the truth. He will find President Uhuru Kenyatta alone who can stand and say this is what Africa needs. And I thank President Uhuru Kenyatta on international scene and on regional peace and on regional politics. You have done very well and stood firm against any forces of interference. But when he goes to Nigeria, Miriam, what will he find? He will find a man who is Boko Haram himself. A man who promised us that he will destroy Boko Haram. A man who said in 100 days, I will finish Boko Haram. His country, the country Nigeria, has been reduced to a country that kidnaps people, women, girls. We might not find a generation of girls in Nigeria in the future. It's a sad state, a state that we should condemn as Africans. So the 3 countries that he has chosen are of key, very crucial to the United States friendship with Africa. But will Africans benefit from his visit? Yes, hotels will benefit. Accommodation will be paid in advance. Security will be tightened. Those are some of the features we shall be receiving. But are there implementation protocols we are going to sign? Do we have any protocol? Have they brought? Are they also requesting for Taliban to be given some space in Kenya to settle? Remember, we still have a huge number of Talibans and the former Taliban helpers, informers, intelligence networkers. All of them are crowded in Doha, Miriam. I have investigated that. The Americans evacuated them to Doha, and they are still looking around for places where to dump them. They have dumped some in our country, Uganda. We are humanitarian. Kenya is a humanitarian state. It might be. Those are some of the things that we don't know whether they will be discussed, but I suspect on international scene also Kenya will be asked what role it has to play. The question of the Indian Ocean maritime border dispute will rise up. So that is exactly what will happen. What will happen to the situation when he arrives here? So in any case, it is not anything that we shall gain. We shall gain in terms of tourism. We shall gain in terms of heightened security. We shall also gain in terms of traffic jams, especially now tomorrow on Mombasa Road must be tight. So some of those also costs the economies of this country a lot of money. But we shall gain in terms of longer terms that Kenya and the US will have a relationship, an ally in the Great Lakes region that United States can rely on. But United States also should reciprocate, not to regime change. For example, Miriam, one thing before I leave the stage and leave others to do their analysis, because there is plenty of time for them. Look at the situation that already 9 leaders of opposition, hosted by the State Department, which the Secretary of State heads, have signed a memorandum of understanding for a transitional government. So how did we know that there was a transitional government going to be in place? And at the same time, we are telling Obasanjo that we thank you very much for the peace efforts. And we are in touch, encouraging him to bring peace. How will peace be achieved, Miriam? When the Prime Minister of Ethiopia has another government transitionally being funded and logistically being equipped by statistics in the US. It is there. You saw that. I think you are aware of that. 9 members committee of opposition parties ready to take over power across in Ethiopia. So, in a nutshell, it's a visit. It's a very good one for Kenya. Very good one. Kenya must be briefed on United Nations Security Council resolutions, what America wants to push forward so that it doesn't get a veto. That is the diplomacy. But on practical terms for us resolving the conflicts that we see in the Great Lakes region, we might have none coming. I submit.
Very well. Thank you, Doctor, for that. Now, the top U.S. diplomat, of course, will visit Nairobi first, where the unfolding crisis in Ethiopia and Sudan has been on the top of worry for the U.S. And I think they've called President Kenyatta sometimes back. President Joe Biden did that to talk to President Kenyatta about that. So it is expected that this could be also one of the top of the agendas that is making Blinken come to Kenya, which, along the ongoing conflict in Somalia as well, are set to top the agenda during this meeting. And we know even in the maritime dispute, U.S. has been strongly supporting Kenya in that regard. So that could be just part of what will be discussed when he meets President Uhuru Kenyatta. Daniel Wesonga, this meeting by Anthony Blinken, what is likely? Are we likely to see more peace in the Horn of Africa? What do you think will be the impact of it?
Yes, thank you, Miriam Ogutu. And of course, the visit by the U.S. State Secretary Anthony Blinken once again puts Kenya on the map as a regional strategic perhaps partner for the U.S. And as it is, Kenya has been holding a very, very quintessential position. That is a non-permanent seat in the UN Security Council. So Kenya is so far the greatest partner of the US in terms of security and counterterrorism and other international matters of interest. So I believe his visit perhaps and the discussion perhaps we'll have with the President Uhuru Kenyatta and the government of Kenya will have some kind of resolve where we could have emissaries sent to Ethiopia. And also in matters the maritime border dispute with Somalia, we saw in the dailies today that President Uhuru Kenyatta had sent a high voltage security experts to his counterpart of Somalia, President Mohamed Farmajo. So that comes down to what Dr. Masanga has been always advocating for, that the dispute between the maritime border dispute between Kenya and Somalia can only be settled in an amicable way outside the court. Otherwise, if we take the matters to an international stage like the ICJ, then that issue is more likely to spiral out of control. And I believe with the visit from Blinken, and of course, talking with President Uhuru Kenyatta, who has been seen as the greatest diplomat of all the Kenyan presidents, we believe something positive is going to come out of it. And also in matters of Ethiopian conflict, we saw yesterday that until yesterday, the most international players were still holding that former President Obasanjo, Olusegun Obasanjo, is going to be the one leading those discussions to bring peace in that particular country. But I believe when Blinken meets with President Uhuru Kenyatta and other regional leaders, I believe they should have someone from the region, people who have expertise and who understand the characteristic and maybe whatever is involved in this particular conflict, so that they are able to diagnose it and they are able to give a very, very mitigative remedy for this particular conflict. Otherwise, I believe it's going to bring some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, even though regarding Ethiopia, I'm not quite 100% optimistic that it will bring the white smoke at the end of it, but it might give some reprieve to the crisis. I submit.
Okay, thank you. And we know, of course, the the U.S. Envoy to the Horn of Africa has been shuttling between Nairobi and Addis Ababa and trying to bring the African Union officials together, the leadership that has been mediating the process in Ethiopia to at least have Abiy Ahmed's government and the rebels get a ceasefire, but that has not worked out very well. So with the visit by the Secretary of State, would it have an influence that perhaps might influence a different outcome of what we see right now, the conflict that is ongoing, especially in Ethiopia, and the stalemate we see in Sudan? Samuel Tawish.
Well, thank you so much, Miriam. It may as well be argued that maybe with the coming in of the U.S. Secretary, maybe there's going to be so much in terms of finding solution to the crisis that continues to bedevil the continent of Africa, and more particularly the cases you've cited. Ethiopia, as we speak today, is in crisis. When you look into Sudan, what is happening today is in crisis. Yes, maybe there's going to be some, of course, some input coming from that part of the world to see how maybe together how we can be able to restore peace and stability in those war-torn nations. So we've seen the uprising, or what I would call, of course, the conflict in these parts of the world. That is Ethiopia and Sudan, specifically in this region as we speak today. So with the coming in of the U.S. Secretary, I think, and Kenya, Senegal, and Nigeria being strategic in the Horn of Africa, I think they've chosen these parts of the world, or these parts of the continent, really to be for their position in the continent and to be able to spearhead the security and peace negotiations or talks, especially in the warring nations. So, Miriam, this is a welcome visit at this particular time. Also, we have spoken about the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic. Africa has had a very big challenge when it came, for example, on getting the vaccines. We've heavily been relying on the Western power countries to be able to donate some of the vaccines to the African nations, really to vaccinate its own people. And as we speak today, we are not anywhere near the target of vaccination. And therefore, with the coming in of the U.S. Secretary, maybe we expect there's going to be a very pleasant announcement, maybe that the U.S. government is going to make more commitment towards helping the continent of Africa in as far as the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. Also, I think my colleague panelists, including, of course, Dr. David Masanga, has also spoken about the issue of Kenya and Somalia maritime dispute. And we are actually at a very catch-22 situation as a country and as a region, really not to understand how to go about the decision by ICJ and the decision that both Kenya and Somalia have taken on this particular conflict. Kenya insisting that they are not going to allow any of its territorial boundaries to go to Somalia, and Somalia also insists that they are going to abide by the decision by the ICJ. So where are we left as a people? Are we going to see Kenya and Somalia really get into a war and fight because of the territorial boundaries? Those are some of the fundamental things I suppose the U.S. Secretary will also be discussing, understanding the strategic position that Kenya really plays in as far as restoring peace and stability in Somalia, fighting terrorism, not only in Somalia, but in the rest of the African continent. It has also been a very big nightmare, not only to Africans, but I think globally, and U.S. will be very keen to see how they can continue to bolster that relationship and a working relationship between, of course, the U.S. and the rest of the African continent. Mm-hmm. Miriam, there's also the question of the climatic crisis. We've just had the other day the Glasgow summit in Scotland, and some people or critics have argued that it was more of a talking shop. We may not as well see maybe a solution or action-oriented actions being really taken in this front, away from just having that summit and people making their submissions and making their proposals. Maybe there's not going to be so much. We'll also really like to see what the U.S. has in as far as addressing that particular, of course, concern that Africa has, because it has always felt, and which is a genuine and legitimate concern, that it not being the biggest polluter in the world, it is actually the one which is the biggest, which is bearing the biggest brand when it comes to the resultant effect of the pollution in the world. So we'll also want to see really what the U.S. has in that particular front. But I agree largely with what all the panelists have said, and we expect more, including the bilateral talks strengthening the ties between U.S. and Africa, and particularly Kenya, economic ties, trade, and how we can increase importation and exportation of goods between the two countries, if not the rest of African continent and the US. I submit, Miriam.
All right. And speaking of which, the US improving its relationship with Africa, when he will be going to Abuja, where he will meet Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari, and in Nigeria he will deliver a speech on the US-Africa policy. So I will be interested to hear what Biden's administration's Africa-US policy will look like. That is something I'll be looking forward to hear what they have to say about that. Samson Omechi, this visit by Blinken, is it timely and is it likely to influence a different outcome from what we see and the bit of turmoil that we see in this Horn of Africa right now?
Thank you, Miriam. I think we are not doing bad as a continent, and we are happy that now the visitor is coming in, so that even it's Swahili they say mgeni njoo mgeni apone.
Mwenyeji.
So
mgeni njoo mwenyeji apone, sio wasema hivyo.
Mwenyeji apone. So it's good to see that and remember the new administration, as there is that perception that they are African friendly. Remember Trump, there were some issues with Africans. So I think from where I see that there is going to be some kind of solutions coming out of that trip, and even the Africa now will relate their concerns on the table, so that at the end of the day, the Trump administration will, at some point, I think the issues in Ethiopia is complicated. It cannot be sorted by that one party trip, but at the end of the day, something will come out of the negotiations, something will come out of the meetings, and in the long run, we will achieve something rich. And as Africans, we are hopeful that the Trump, the Biden administration will come to realization that Africa has challenges, and these challenges cannot be sorted out by just talking, or just the duty that we used to be long time. It is now time that the new administration can come face to face with reality and see exactly what is happening on the ground. I think it's a good step that they are coming now to see, so that at the end of the day, we can say now that you came here, and this is what we said, what have you done? I think the issue of the Somali Kenya, I don't think whether the Somalis has capacity to fight. There is no fight at the end of the day, but the people will talk and agree, because in the long run, Kenya is stable. We are stable. We don't complain so much. I doubt whether Somali can as well try to fight, because they can't fight. They don't have that capacity to fight. So at the end of the day, and as earlier indicated, because I remember we have discussed about the same, it is about the time these two countries sitting around the table and talk. There is no way the government of Kenya, the Kenyan people will agree with the position that has been taken by Somalia. In any case, that is the decision that came from that court. Kenya never participated. So they cannot talk that they win. How can you win in your own way where you are just participating yourself? So there was nothing that the Somali can now purport to tell us that they won. We won. Kenya never participated in the first place. And that is the concept of law. They never participated, they withdrew in the earlier stages. So the tribunal could have not even proceeded to make a decision. I doubt whether that decision was fair. That is why we are saying, let us now come back and talk. Because if you insist, you can as well insist. I think now the issue of the Ethiopia issue is not something small that we can start to wish that now the Americans are here to sort it out. Something has to be balanced on a serious note. Those people, they are not fighting for free. They are not just fighting because they want to fight. There is something that there are grievances. There are genuine grievances. And any serious negotiator must find out and identify those grievances. Before you even start talking that you want people to negotiate, people you want to conciliate, conciliation must start with us in equal footing. The Tigrayans had issues with the government of Ethiopia, and any serious leaders from the world must find out what is this that people are fighting for? What is this that these people are dying for? So as long as we have not identified those issues clearly, in a clear way, that we identify 1, 2, 3, 4, these issues that the people want to talk, we're just talking, and the people remain fighting. So it is time now, African leaders, the leaders of this world, they must find out what is this happening? What is happening in Sudan? Why is people fighting? Something is not adding up. So at the end of the day, we must find out what are these Tigrayans fighting for. What is this that they are fighting for? Unless we find out the reasons, the grievances, clear grievances, we cannot just sitting somewhere and say that now just agree over what? We must find out why people are dying, why people are fighting. At the end of the day, there must be something. There is always what we say in labor, genuine grievances, ripe disputes. There is a ripe dispute. So we must find out. Leaders of the world, leaders of Africa, the visa that is coming, time has come that they must find out in these war-torn areas, what is this that is happening there, and the people are fighting. If we find out the reasons, then we can as well, we are now closer to solutions.
All right. Hopefully, Basanje will help in finding the problems that are ailing. And now that Blanken is coming, perhaps we'll add a push to that. As we conclude, Douglas Kirimi, something that Samson has brought up there about previous administration, that is Donald Trump's administration, and how the relationship they had with Africa, even at some point, he was caught referring to African nations with a name I cannot pronounce here, and of course he went ahead to impose a travel ban on Muslim majority countries, among other things that affected the continent. So is this seen as a damage control by Biden's administration, and why he's sending his top diplomat? And also, what will be the impact generally, especially in this side of Africa, before it goes to West Africa? Because, West Africa also right now is currently under a lot of crisis. And it's interesting that he chose to go to Nigeria.
Thank you, Miriam. I believe that this is not a damage control for the government of the US. I believe that country has always worked for their own interest, because I think part of their foreign policy is that their interest comes first, Donald Trump used to say, and every other country is always looking out for themselves. Even individuals, humanity is always looking out for itself, including the US is not an exemption. And I believe that the US has always done the best that they can to protect those interests that are ingrained in the African continent the way we know it today. Remember, even Donald Trump, with all the bashing that he had to do on the continent of Africa, he had to invite the presidents of Africa, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, went to meet the president of the US. He had to underscore their bilateral ties, he had to underscore their mutual benefit in terms of US cooperation on Africa, and many other things that the US has always been keen on looking out for themselves and issues that touch on the very welfare of the people of America. There is also one thing, Miriam, that I believe that is going to happen, or why the top diplomat from the Biden administration, Anthony Blinken, is coming to the Republic of Kenya. There is a war that simmers, and every day it gets closer to a full-blown war in Ethiopia. They need to be able to stop that, because an unstable Kenya, or a Kenya that is not stable, Kenya that is in turmoil, is a blow to the interest of the American people or the government of America, especially Kenya, which is considered as the gateway to Africa. So I believe that they want to come and discuss especially the issue in Ethiopia, the issues in Somalia, the issues in other countries like Burundi and Uganda, and also Central Africa Republic, Miriam, or Sudan, the former Sudan, and also South Sudan. They need to be able to discuss those issues in the Kenyan soil, and also make sure that the Kenyan counterterrorism and also security capabilities are improved for their own benefit and also for the benefit of the African continent, and especially Kenya, which plays a very huge role for these people and for this government, so that they can, for this government of the people of America, so that they can be able to continue improving on the bilateral ties with the people of Kenya as a steering boat to the African continent. Because, Miriam, when you look at it, the cooperation in terms of security and peace capabilities or peace missions that are planned and also dispatched from the Republic of Kenya is of interest to the people of America. If they have any other interest in Africa, they have to secure it from Kenya. If Ethiopia goes to war, that means Kenya is going to war. If Somalia continues their maritime issues with Kenya, it means that Kenya is going to go to war. Instead of Kenya working for the benefit and the welfare of the interest of the American people, Kenya will be defending itself. That is a role for the American people. They wouldn't want that. So the first stop is to come to the Republic of Kenya as a base for their own interest. Because, Miriam, I believe even as they choose to go to Nigeria, they are expanding a base for their own. They are doing base expansion for their own interest, and where they can be able to scale the same. And in West Africa, as countries continue banning in West Africa, Nigeria, with their population, with their military capabilities, with their cooperative cooperation agreements with the people of America, they are the good base for themselves, for the people of America and the people of Nigeria to be able to look for a working solution that can be able to be brought to West Africa for the benefits of the American people and the continent of Africa. So, Miriam, as I conclude, for the Republic of Kenya, we are going to benefit on security cooperation, and also we are going to benefit from integration that the American people would want to have on the people of Africa, so that they can continue expanding their own interest and also securing Africa the way we know it, because Kenya is the base of African operations, or the gateway to the interest of other countries in the region, or investment hub of the region, and especially the bigger percentage of investments of the American people in education, in transport, and every other investment that the American people would think they would first of all base it in the Republic of Kenya, Miriam, and I submit.
Thank you so much. And that is where we end our show this afternoon, Doc. Unless
Miriam, before you end, we must highlight all the points that we have brought in are crucial points. And I thank the panel for bringing in the points on the question of the visit of one key outstanding issue that I want the panel to go back and think about is the question of regime change. Is the USA sponsoring regime change? When you look at some African countries are not happy with the regime change tactics that are being offered by the USA. For example, the peace process in South Sudan is stagnant. It has remained there. The United States of America has not put in enough resources to make sure that there is proper implementation of the peace process in South Sudan. That's a worry for me and a worry for many other people in the region. And yet, after that, before they do that in South Sudan, they are in Khartoum. You can see in Khartoum a change of government has taken place. They have made an about turn on ICC. They have allowed the chief prosecutor of International Criminal Court to come to Sudan to take Bashir away, which has caused a jittery among the soldiers who have overthrown the government in the civilian government of Prime Minister Hamidou, and have thrown it out and taken power. And you can see reports coming from Khartoum will indicate to you that they are bringing back quite a lot of former technocrats who can help to stabilize the economy, the politics, and the social life of the people of Sudan. Another point that the US is very concerned about is Libya. We are going to elections in Libya. And you have seen Muammar Gaddafi's son, the only surviving son, I think, that we know of, who's still alive. My friend Said Gaddafi, whom I had, we worked so hard about ICC. I'm very pleased that there is some movement towards democratization of Libya, which has been cut into parts by the same superpowers after the invasion and the killing of Gaddafi. So these are some of the things that the panel and other listeners should look at. Is the USA policy on Africa a nightmare? Does it bring regime change? Are we regime changing? We have already got leaders for Ethiopia. We don't know whether they have already got leaders for Miriam's country. We don't know. How sure are you that Miriam's country has got leaders they favor or the people they want to lead this country? How sure? So these are some of the puzzling questions that whose benefit is it? Is it for us? Is it practical? Will they leave money on the ground? They have halfway, they have left us on climate change. And they want us to remove fossil diesels, oil, fuels. How do we remove it? We don't have the money. We are not the ones looking for the minerals that are hidden down. It is them. So for me, all in all, there is quite a lot to benefit and there is also quite a lot to ask. There are more questions to be asked than answers to be given to Africa. That is my submission. Thank you very much, viewers. Thank you. Back to you, Miriam, in the studios in Nairobi. God bless you. God bless all of you.
Very well. Thank you so much, Doc, for that ending, and the rest of our panelists. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow, God willing, 9 a.m. East African time for more news from across Kenya and indeed across the continent of Africa. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye for now.